Well, as the old saying goes, it's not over till it's over. And the presidential election of 2020 is not over. The lying legacy corrupt mainstream globalist media was so quick to ordain, to sanction, to coronate Joe Biden as president elect on election night, and they have kept this up to the point that anyone that tries to point out any voting irregularity, obviously you are into some type of conspiracy theory, you are in denial, you are in delusion, etc., etc., etc. Now, at first, of course, this was the most pure election ever held. Why? This was like freshly fallen snow. It was pure white, no problems whatsoever. Then, as the avalanche of affidavits came forward that were signed and notarized as actual legal witness affidavits, that in a court of law, these people could go to jail for perjury, you know, the exact opposite of all the so-called whistleblowers against Donald J. Trump that we have been treated to over the last 4 years. Even the whistleblowers of the whole Ukraine investigation, which led to the impeachment sham of President Trump. None of those people were actually in any way held liable for what they had to say. Theirs were not actual sworn testimony. It was just innuendo, second, third, 10th hand, made up, fabricated information. These individuals, as they have come forward, now you have the media trying to say, well, there's not enough there to overturn the election. You even have the media running stories now. Hey, every election cycle, there is some shenanigans. We have to concede that point. But not enough. Not enough. Really? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at what's not enough. The Nevada GOP released a series of tweets, 8,000 ballots, where there's actual no physical address for such addresses given. 15,000 ballots, which were addresses to vacant lots, storefronts, empty warehouses. 2,400 ballots where the person has changed their address out of state or out of country. 42,000, let that number sink in, 42,000 double ballots. In other words, where the same person voted twice. 1,500 dead people voted. And 20,000 non-Nevada mailing address ballots received. The Arizona Speaker of the legislative body has requested that their state not certify the election results. Why? They need to do a verification of the signatures. In other words, do the signatures on these mail-in ballots actually match the signature of the so-called registered voter? Now, some of you are thinking, you're just grasping at straws. This is ridiculous. Really? Because in 2008, Barack Obama, then candidate for president, was concerned about the very same thing.
Very last question. There's word from Florida that they intend to put out a mailing sort of a campaign, an election process whereby they make up for the primary they had before, which was ruled out of order by the Democratic National Committee, and you did not campaign in. They're talking about people mailing in their ballots. Do you trust the security, the honesty of such an election process?
Well, I think we'd have to figure out whether this was fraud-proof. I mean, Oregon, for example, has a terrific mail-in system, but they've already scanned everybody's signatures who's registered to vote so that they can check to make sure that, in fact, the right people are voting. And that's something that I think you'd have to figure out.
And 12 years later, nothing has changed. Nothing. By the way, do you know that after every election cycle, we put together these committees, these panels made up of bipartisan groups, Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservative, and they all jump through the same hoops. They all come back always with the same recommendations. They always say things like the best way to stop voter fraud is, first of all, you need to have voter identification. Yeah. after every election cycle, we go through this. They make all these recommendations and they never act on them. Why? Because they really don't have any intention of ensuring the integrity of the vote. They're not about elections, they're about selections. Now, they didn't pull all of this during Trump's first run because they assumed incorrectly that, well, the American people certainly aren't going to go for this guy. Well, there's no doubt about it. All you have to do is look at President Trump and know by the expression on his face. Here is a man who knows he won something and he knows he's been denied. And for those of you that say, that's not possible, really? You ever played on a ball team where you know full well your team won that game, but the officials denied you? Ever coach in a scenario like that? I have. Ever watched one of your kids be robbed of an honor, a trophy, a win that was rightfully theirs? That's what we're seeing happen. And for those of you who say, oh, that cannot happen here. Really? Again, do you really think John F. Kennedy was assassinated by a lone gunman? And certainly all you have to do is look at the raw, unedited film of what happened that day. And if you're shot from behind, your head doesn't go back, it would go forward. The fact that President Kennedy's head went back, and when Jackie went to retrieve him and is seen picking up something off the back of the trunk, you think maybe it might have been, well, and I don't want to get overly gross here, but we watched a president assassinated on television, and then we were told we didn't see what we saw. A government that is so good at all these covert operations, and we pride ourselves of having this incredible intel community that can basically, even with their own hackers, they can break into other countries' computer systems and make those countries think that it was a different country that did the hacking. And yet, we're now being told we're not seeing what we're seeing. Well, in Georgia, witnesses came forward this past week and they gave testimony of what was happening.
2,506 felons voted illegally in Georgia. 10,315 or more individuals to vote who are deceased by the time of the election.
Voted in person on October 23rd. I was told that there was an absentee ballot already out for me, but I never requested one. The next day, my mom called the voter center and was told that somebody voted absentee in my name on October 7th.
Those paper ballots were not secure. I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican. I hope you'll take what these people are telling you seriously. It's important. The people's voice matters in this country.
One witness came forward and walked us through the video footage, actually taken in the counting room, showing that all of the poll watchers, especially the Republicans, and all of the media were told to go home, that they weren't going to count any more ballots and they would resume the following morning. So once the room was emptied, all of a sudden out from under a table came these bins of extra ballots, and they started counting them and sending them on through without any checkers in the room. Now, the video that I'm about to show has been fact-checked by Facebook and other social media platforms. It's been determined you're actually seeing them count legal votes. Really? Well, number one, if they're legal votes, why did they want all of the observers gone? That's like two teams playing against each other and they tell the umpires, they tell the reffing crew, go home. We got this. We're going to suspend the game. We'll play it again. We'll pick it up from here tomorrow. The referees all go home, and then the two teams go ahead and finish without umpires, without referees, and then in the morning they announce a winner of the game when there were no umpires or referees there to actually see what went on. Now, the fact that the witness here, who just happens to be an attorney, uses the phrase, look, here come these extra ballots and suitcases. Here's what the fact checker said. Those are not suitcases. Those are actual bins meant for the storing of ballots. So obviously, these are legitimate ballots. These were bins of ballots hidden under a table, under a black tablecloth, that no one except the person who put them there knew they were there until all the checkers had been removed from the room, and then those bins came out. How many of those ballots were all for Joe Biden? Enough to tip the scale. It's finally gotten to the point where the feckless governor of Georgia has said, Shazam, we've got some problems here. You think? You think?
So I'm Jackie Pick, and I'm here as a volunteer. I am a lawyer, but I'm not acting as a lawyer in this case. I'm just helping out the legal team here. And going to explain to you the evidence that we have from State Farm Arena here in Fulton County, which goes to what Ray was talking about in terms of fraud or misrepresentation. We have 2 observers there that are going to show up, not at this point, this is in the morning, as you can see the daylight. They're going to get there at about 8 o'clock to watch the tabulation of absentee and military ballots. But according to their affidavits, at about 10 o'clock, there was one person working the polls who told everyone in the room to leave on the basis they were going to stop counting and return at 8:30 in the morning. So what you're going to see, look at the ladies in yellow. You'll see that they will begin just sitting still, doing nothing, ostensibly not working, because after all, they said they're going to stop counting. They will wait until the witnesses over there in that roped off area, the press and the observers, leave the room. Then you'll see them move into action and begin scanning ballots. At about 8 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to roll this back and show it to you. There you go. So now they're going to start pulling these ballots out from under this table. This table, the black one, was placed there by the lady with the blonde braids at about 8:22 a.m. in the morning. So she put that table there. So the same person who's staying behind now, the same person who cleared the place out under the pretense that we're going to stop counting, is the person who put the table there at 8:22 in the morning. Yeah, I saw 4 suitcases come out from underneath the table. Yeah, upper right hand, you see the gentleman in the red. So he just pulled one out. So what are these ballots doing there, separate from all the other ballots? And why are they only counting them whenever the place is cleared out with no witnesses? Is the question. So these machines can process about 3,000 ballots an hour. You have multiple machines there, and they're there for 2 hours. So you do the math. How many ballots went through those machines in those 2 hours when there was no one there to supervise, to be present, consistent with your statutes and rules, to supervise the tabulation? We believe that could easily be, and probably is certainly, beyond the margin of victory in this race.
The other day I happened to be listening to a radio program. I think it was Brian Kilmeade. I'm not sure. One of the guys over on the Faux Pas News Network, that basically he comes on every day and just recaps everything Fox News did the day before on television. And he had Chris Wallace on there. Yes, that brain trust who's trying to live up to his dad's shadow but doesn't even come close. And Chris Wallace going on and on about how the Trump legal team is like a circular firing squad, and now they're discouraging people from voting in Georgia. It's going to be just, what are they thinking? They don't know what they're doing. And then out of the other side of his mouth, he's talking about the corrupt voting which is happening right now in the state of Georgia for the Senate runoff race, and that Republicans better get it in gear because, and Chris Wallace even named Stacey Abrams has recruited tens of thousands of illegal votes and voters, and she's under investigation. Hey, Chris, no possibility whatsoever that this same Stacey Abrams was doing that on the night of the presidential election? How do you live with yourself? How do you, in any type of good conscience, live with yourself? When, on the one hand, you're saying that the presidential election was pure as the fresh fallen snow, but the Senate runoff, that's a problem in Georgia. Everything else has been square, right down. But this is a problem. They really are up to some shenanigans in this Senate runoff. Duh. And don't think for a moment. See, Stacey Abrams, the reason that she thought, we've watched the videotape 100 times, the reason she thought Biden was going to name her as the VP, because she promised the DNC Georgia. And she had the apparatus in place to make Georgia, quote unquote, flip to Trump. They were so convinced of it that the Democrats knew going into election night, we don't have Georgia, but we got Georgia. And of course, it's always Fulton County, Atlanta. And now, all of a sudden, Chris Wallace is calling into question the integrity of the Senate vote, but the presidential vote, that was perfectly fine. Give me a break. These people lie, lie, lie. We're being lied to. And again, I don't want to be like some conservative media pundits promising. What I do want you to understand is this. Number one, Donald Trump won re-election in a landslide. Number two, he has been denied. Number three, it really comes down to, will the court, i.e. the Supreme Court, step in and make this right, kick it back to the House of Representatives to get this thing solved once and for all. Will all of that happen? That I don't know. I know what the constitutional process is here. I know what's supposed to happen. But if we've learned nothing else by watching what we're seeing unfold before our eyes, is just because the Constitution says this is what needs to happen, doesn't mean that's going to happen. Just because we know what these judges ought to be doing doesn't mean they're going to do it. Remember, it is a rigged game. And what's going to come down to is, will there be enough pressure and enough still non-swamp people in this process, in the decision making, that they can actually, if you will, intervene and do the right thing. Hey, that's it for today's rant. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you give this a thumbs up. Share this to your social media platforms, and make sure you're a subscriber to my channel. They keep messing with my subscription. Every day the number changes. It goes down, it goes back up. It goes down, it goes back up. Make sure you are still subscribed. Smack the bell and click the word all to get notification of my next rant.